What's up everybody? So in this video I'm going to be making this Mandalorian knee armor. It's made out of 6mm foam, and the rocket darts on the side are also made out of 5 and 2mm foam. So everything on this is made out of foam. It's a pretty quick, easy build with just a little bit of velcro on the back to strap it to your leg. As always, we start by cutting the pattern out. So the pattern is labeled, everything is labeled 6mm, 2mm, and 10mm. This main part here is a 6mm, so I am tracing the left side, then flipping over to get the right side. I draw them together so that I don't have a glue seam in the middle, so there's no seam. And then you just cut that out as best you can. Use a big razor blade for the straight pieces, and then for the curve parts, you'll see I'll go in with a little X-Acto knife. Alright, so this is the side square piece. I drew the square first, and then I cut the middle out so that I can put it back on the foam and then trace the inside panel line a lot easier. The inside panel line is recessed, so what I do is I cut everything out first. The outside pieces are beveled too, so I cut the square out, then I go through and I angle my blade, and I try to do 45 angles the best I can. It's a little tricky to do it, especially on the 10mm. Sometimes it takes a couple cuts. I will sand them smooth with the rotary tool after anyway, so it's not super important to get your cuts perfect. And then that centerpiece gets cut out and then moved down. So after I get that square centerpiece cut out completely, you can see I'm just pushing it inward, and then I glue the top and bottom first where I want them. It's glued pretty close to 2mm depth, because there's a 2mm piece that goes in the middle, and that is flush with the top, so it's about 2mm. So here I am cutting that middle piece out of 2mm, and you'll have to adjust the pattern a little bit, just because after you cut everything it's a little different. So I size it up, and it needs to be trimmed a little bit, so I just trim the side and the bottom so it fits in there a little better, and then I just glue it in there. So after that's glued in place, I sand the back of it where the inside piece is lower, just to make everything smooth on the back. Now I'm heat treating the main part here, and I'm just putting it around this round, I think it's a hot chocolate jug. I keep all my tools in it. And that just heat treats it and helps it hold its shape better. Now I'm gluing the side darts on to the main body. These are labeled which side is which. The main center square there, that just gets glued on pretty close to the side wall. It's also labeled on the pattern, but you can kind of eyeball it too. What I'm doing here is I'm using 5mm craft foam, and I'm just trying to figure out what the best size is to make a cylinder that would be about the same size as what I need. Now I'm using the rotary tool to sand the top at a 45 angle. You sand it till the top part is just about to the edge, and that gives you like a nice bevel slope. Now I'm working on the inside piece. It's pretty tricky. It's kind of why I'm not in camera view, because you got to look pretty closely at it. It's really small. The smaller the tube you're trying to make with foam, it's pretty tricky to get it to fit together. And then now that just goes on the inside. I'm gluing the seam together a little bit better. The contact cement doesn't always hold perfect on those because it's under a lot of tension and pressure. So now I'm just gluing it on the inside of the bigger piece. So here I'm taking a piece of 2mm foam, and I'm gluing that on the top, and then cutting it to shape and just holding it in place. Now I'm using a cutting wheel really carefully to go around and put the detail lines in. I think they're like recessed detail lines. This is takes a pretty steady hand. I didn't do it perfectly, but you can do it with practice. Now I'm taking another bit and just making the middle holes a little bigger on the outside. Gluing them in place. Even though I wouldn't recommend gluing them in place yet, I would glue them in after you paint. I end up cutting them off and then painting and then gluing them back on at the end. Then I'm just taking my sanding drum and just going around and making everything kind of beveled and not super sharp straight lines. I'm going through and putting in some damage, some blast marks, and some wear and tear on the edges. Okay, so I put a layer of Mod Podge on. I water it down just a bit, and I think I ended up putting 3 layers of Mod Podge on before paint. Alright, now while that dries, it's time for coffee break. And this coffee break is sponsored by my sister's company, Love by the Letters. This cup I'm drinking out of, she made. It says Dog Dad. She makes a bunch of lettering. She does hand lettering, and she does bullet journaling, and she has an Etsy page where she sells all her stuff. So now what I'm doing is I'm just mixing up some blue paint, some dark and some light together. This first layer ends up being too light for what I thought the reference images looked like. So I end up going over it again with a little bit of darker blue. So here you can see I mixed that paint up again. Same color, but I just added a little bit of darker blue to it, a little bit more. And, I'm much more happy with this color. This color blue is kind of hard to get to not streak and show brush marks. I think I painted 3 to 4 coats of this on. Alright, so here I put a brush through the back of the dart so that I can hold it by that and paint it. This is just a little bit of aluminum testers enamel paint. I put 2 coats of this on each dart. Now I'm going through with some silver testers enamel paint, and I'm getting in all the cracks and battle damage and blaster shots that I ground out with the Dremel, just to highlight those. And I go around and I do like a quick dry brush on the edges, just to make everything look like the paint's wore off, and places where it would rub on your pants and your clothes and the ground and all that kind of stuff. So as you can tell, I took those darts off to paint, and now I'm just re-gluing them back on. I labeled the back of them, top and bottom, just so I knew exactly where they went, because the cut lines were a little different. Now I'm just taking some black craft paint, and I'm painting the inside of the darts to make them look like they have depth. Now I'm going through with some dark brown paint as the final weather. I'm just trying to get that in all the cracks and all the inside pieces where dirt and grime would stay, and it would be hard to clean off. And I pretty much do that over the entire surface until I'm pretty happy with how it looks. Decided to paint the back black just in case you see it. You probably won't see it because it's pretty snug to your leg, but just in case you do, it just makes it, if you paint it black, it makes it look like the shadow or just the dark area of the armor, so it doesn't stand out as being bright white. Now on the back, I'm just gluing on some long pieces of velcro. These pieces are a little bit longer than you need, but then that means that you could use it on different people could wear it. If it's a little bit longer, you can tighten it or loosen it, and that's it. So here I'm just giving you a quick comparison of what the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett knee armor looks like. On my right leg there, the yellow one is Boba Fett's. They're pretty similar. His is more round. The Mandalorian's is more square. And that's it for the build. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. There's a lot more armor on the Mandalorian, so we'll do that later.